Avengers Infinity War. Now, pretty much all the movies from the past few phases, including this one, were all building up to this. And boy, was this an event. Whether you saw it at home, whether you saw it in theaters, this was an event we all were waiting for. For the Avengers, all together, on the big screen, finally battling Thanos and trying to get their hands on the Infinity Stones and the Infinity Gauntlet. And boy, what a shocker it was when we genuinely saw them lose. When that scene came up, Thor tosses his axe at Thanos. And Thanos says, "You should have gone for the head." And then snaps. Oh my god, if that didn't get your jaw dropping, then I don't know what did in this whole entire phase or the past few phases. All our heroes are together, all their character arcs have been built up, most of their stories have been told, and although they had more stories to be told, for the most part, most of the stories that needed to be told to build up their character have been told. Everything has built up to this moment. Just for them to lose. And to go on with this new struggle of trying to rebuild the world after losing half the population of the entire planet. Technically the entire universe, because he wasn't only going for Earth. But of course, the Avengers are, well, citizens of Earth. So their main concern is what's happening on Earth. I would have loved in the later phase of Phase 4, maybe even some prequel stuff in Phase 5, maybe in the sequel, the Season 2 to Welcome to Finish, what the fuck is wrong with me? Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we will get more details on how people are affected by the blip, not just on Earth, but who knows, maybe even beyond the galaxy. Because he wasn't just trying to cut the population of Earth in half, the entire universe. He wanted to cut the population of the entire universe in half. Of course, we were not really going to get too much of this in this film. He had just wiped out half the universe. We weren't necessarily going to get that too much in the next film, but still, a lot of us were definitely hoping within the next properties within Phase 4, we would have seen more of the effects of the blip on the Avengers and maybe even regular everyday people and how they were just trying to live with the aftermath. And again, not just on Earth, but beyond the stars as well. Regardless, this was definitely a fun film. I would say definitely had some people getting emotional. Later memes they definitely poked at the heartstring with later memes. And man, it was just jaw-dropping, just awe-inspiring. All that led up to this. And it was just exciting. This was peak hype. This was peak quality of the MCU. And I know a lot of people still criticize the film for the many ways that it could have, done a little bit better. And I would agree. I mean, we were all hoping that later on in the film, Hulk would bust out of the Hulkbuster. Why am I stuttering so much? We were all hoping Banner would bust out of the Hulkbuster. Hulk would come out and actually start smashing some shit. Even if he didn't get, a quick lick in on Thanos. We would have loved to have seen him just fucking shit up. I mean, hell, we saw him with the Avengers in that one scene of the end of the film in the trailer. And of course, he's not actually in that scene within the actual film, just the trailer. Now, I know that uh, Marvel Studios has a habit of kind of changing up their trailers so essentially they don't spoil some stuff from the film. And I was always all fine and dandy with that, especially with the creative ways they changed things up with the Thor Ragnarok trailer so it wouldn't spoil some stuff in the Thor movie. I thought it was actually pretty good. I thought it was well done. I thought it did a good job hiding the spoilers, getting people talking, and it didn't come off as false advertisement. Whereas to some people, Hulk not actually being there in that one end scene, which he's not there at all, he's in the trailer, but he's not there at all, felt like a bit of false advertising to some people. And I can understand why. Now, I could look past that, and I can still enjoy the film for what it is, even now. I enjoyed it then, and I enjoy it now. But I can understand why people had that feeling. I was a little disappointed with when Hawk didn't pop out of that Hawk poster. I was literally expecting him to do that. And apparently they actually had planned to do that originally for the film. But then there were some, like, I guess, last minute changes, or they felt like it didn't work too well for the film. It was a bit rushed. Which, actually, seeing the deleted scene, I could agree with that as well. But I think I would have still preferred that and getting Hulk smashing out of the Hulkbuster and, you know, getting into the fight than just what we got now. But even what we got then, I mean. But even for what we got, I don't hate it. I wasn't completely and utterly disappointed. I was minorly disappointed, but I immediately let it go because, of course, the movie was still going. The show still has to go on. And even then, near the end, I was satisfied with the film. I was. Even with that one critique that I have, even with people kind of feeling that it was a bit false advertisement, which I kind of agree. I was a little bit disappointed with that. And even though I kind of liked the way they were working with the trailer so it didn't spoil too much and still got people hyped for the film, some people felt like that was definitely pushing it. You know, Thor not having his eye missing in the trailer, alright, fine. You pretty much forget about that detail once you get to the film. Really, like, you do. And then when you see his eye pop out and then you remember what happened in the trailer, you're like, oh wow, what a creative change. Or you probably didn't even remember that at all until somebody pointed it out to you. Whether you noticed it in a top 10 facts, or did you know this about Thor Ragnarok video, or maybe just somebody told you on the sidelines and you were just like, wait a minute, really? Then you go to check the film and that one scene again side by side and you're like, oh shit, they really did hide his fucked up eye in the trailer. But that's the thing though, with that scene in the Thor Ragnarok trailer versus the Hulk scene in the Infinity War trailer, is that one actually got hype for people to see that scene, to see what will happen before building up to that scene and after that scene with Hulk. You know, when we saw that scene of Thor getting smacked up by Hela and you don't see his eye missing, nobody really batted an eye, even when we realized the changes they made. Because once we got to the film, we forgot about it. We didn't really have hype or expectations for it. We had expectations that he was going to fight Hela. We knew Hulk was probably going to fight. That's probably about it. We obviously had to see in the movie how the narrative goes, how the scenes go. But nobody really had any expectations for him to lose his eye. Nobody really had expectations for him to keep his eye. If you remember that from the trailer, you noticed it and you were like, oh wow, interesting detail that they changed up. If you didn't remember it, you were told afterwards. But regardless, you forgot up until that point. Up until that point, you saw that scene or you were told about the facts of that scene. You didn't think twice of it. You didn't think nothing of it. Because you had no expectations for that scene within the film at all whatsoever. But with that one trailer for Infinity War, with Hulk, in that one scene with all the Avengers together, people did get some hype from that. people did get some expectations from that. So when the expectations of Hulk just being there, just as Hulk, like just being there, he was there, but he was as Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster, as Hulk, as the big angry green monster we all love. He was not there. That scene was a lie. Those other scenes in the other trailers, they're forgivable because they didn't build up a false expectation. For a lot of people, this trailer wasn't, because Infinity War did give a fake expectation. Now, again, I personally can still forgive that. I can look past that, and I can still enjoy the film for what it is. But I could definitely understand where people are coming from, and agree with the fact that it was kind of pushing the line. Because again, it gives an expectation where that other scene did not. But as long as they didn't do it again later on in the future, which I'm not going to get into that debate whether or not they did. I would have to double check some of the trailers. But as long as they didn't do it again, I wouldn't have a problem. You know, it was one situation. Hopefully they don't do it again. But, well, I don't know. I think I'll let you guys debate that amongst yourself in the comment section, whether or not they did make that fuck up again. But regardless, this film was still a fun event. A lot of people still love it. A lot of people still have memories about it. And just like with Civil War, a lot of people had a lot of discussions, a lot of debate back and forth about this film and Thanos' ideology and whether or not he was right. A lot of people thought he was wrong. A lot of people thought he was right. Personally, I at one point thought Thanos was right. But then, well, let's just say I watched Matt Pat's film theory on the whole situation, and he pretty much showed me that, oh no, Thanos actually may have made shit worse. When you have a society that's built for the population that it has, and all of a sudden it just, well, increases or decreases, that's going to be a massive problem on society, especially on the economy of all things. But yeah, I recommend checking the video out for yourself. There are probably other videos out there that will, you know, do an analysis from other creators. But Matt Pat does do the research well. I think he makes a lot of good points, a lot of good arguments. That video was from years ago, but still, nevertheless, I used to think Thanos was right. He was wrong. He just really would have made shit a whole lot worse for Earth and probably the rest of the universe, especially their economies. So, yeah. But given now that what we know what happens later on in the Eternals, what Thanos was concerned of may have more to do with an Eternal bursting out of his planet like an egg, rather than, you know, the loss of all the resources, especially given that his homeworld was so messed up and affected that the gravity isn't even the same like it was before. The gravity is less. But at the same time, I don't know if that would actually be the case because, well, when that one Eternal on Earth, I am fucking up my whole speech in general, was going to burst out of Earth, and before the Eternal stopped it, he was basically going to burst the whole Earth into bits and pieces. So I would think that if an Eternal did burst out of Thanos' planet, his homeworld, like it was an egg, wouldn't it be in pieces? Like, even if it wasn't in a bunch of asteroid bits, now just circling what most likely would have been the moon, I would imagine you would at least have a planet that's in 2 to 3 pieces. Maybe even 4. Like, there's no way. There's no way that an Eternal popped out of Thanos' home world and he didn't completely rip the whole planet apart. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Infinity War. On with the next film. Okay, guys, so for these next two films, originally I was gonna skip them and not really even bring them up too much in a retrospective. Like, I was gonna mention that they exist, mention that I've heard of what happened in the films, what kind of connects them to the other films, or the final film of this phase, Avengers Endgame, and then just go straight into Avengers Endgame, because I can't really give an off the top of my head retrospective of a film that I hadn't seen at the time. But in between these cuts of me making this video, I am really fucking up my speech today. I got a little sick, couldn't work on my videos for a good minute, and said, you know what, let me go ahead and just catch up on those two films. That way I can at least have some sort of a retrospect on them for when I just gloss over them in this video. So now I have seen them and can go over my thoughts on them. And let's go ahead and go over with the first one, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Just like the last one, it was a pretty fun film. I feel like on this one, they go in a bit more heavily on the humor, and they really don't allow the serious moments to be serious moments because of the humor. Now, partially due to the humor in the serious moments, it's kind of, it's supposed to be funny because of the wacky situation happening in such a serious moment. And in some cases, that type of humor can work. In this case, though, for me personally at least, it didn't. At least not all the jokes landed for me. Some of them definitely got a smirk out of me, a giggle here and there. I will definitely say there's a certain charm to this film, just like the last film. So you will come out of it with a smile on your face, probably a cheesy smile. You're going to enjoy the back and forth between the characters, the dialogue, and the narrative as a whole isn't bad. It's a bit enjoyable. Granted, the scene for Ghost's backstory felt like a bit of an exposition dump. And for me personally, the only reason why it felt like an exposition dump is because she was narrating over the flashback. I know a lot of movies have been doing this lately, but I really am getting tired of it because I feel like it kind of ruins the moment of the flashback. Just let the flashback play and be a flashback. If you wanted to start and end with the narration in between the flashback scene and the character explaining her flashback, or I'm sorry, her background, her origin, then I personally would have been fine with that. But when the character feels the need to narrate over the flashback, it for lack of a better way to describe it, it feels like extra sauce on the taco. You don't need it. When it comes to TV shows and cinema, you're coming to a story that's show and tell. But there are some points that need to show, and there are some points that need to tell. In this case, they were trying to do both. I'm sorry, this is show and tell, but not in that way. In a flashback, you show, you don't tell. If you're just going to do the narration, then fine, you tell, but you don't need to show. You're already telling us. If you're going to show it to us, you don't need to explain it to us. We can see what the fuck is happening. It's in front of our eyes. Now, I don't know if you would consider that a critique. Maybe it would just be a minor nitpick. I kind of feel like it's a bit of a minor nitpick more than a critique. But for me personally, I'm getting tired of films doing that, where they show us a scene of exactly what is happening while narrating to us what is happening. I can see what the fuck is happening. You don't need to explain to me. I'm not blind. If I was blind, why would I come to watch a film? I might as well just get an audiobook or get a full-blown transcript version of the film. But it just feels so unnecessary. Like, Show us, don't tell us, motherfucker. That's the whole point of a flashback. To show us. And if you're gonna narrate, you might as well just narrate. You don't need the cutscene. If you're gonna show the cutscene, you don't need the narration. You're already showing us what's happening. It just felt so unnecessary. Regardless, I still did enjoy the film. And I guess you can see you're starting to notice a pattern here. Regardless if I thought the film was great or just decent, I'm still having fun with these films, and that is a good thing. Of course, not everybody's going to feel the same way as me, depending on their taste, you know. Objectively, there are good things this film does, and objectively, there are some things this film does that I cannot stand. Subjectively, I can still enjoy this film for what it is, even through its flaws. I still had fun. And I think that's a good thing to be able to say about any film within this franchise by now, even if it's not a big event. Not every film got to be a big event, got to be this crazy situation with high stakes. You know, some of them can just be fun films. Granted, there are still some seriousness, still some stakes at hand. But at the same time, with all this unnecessary Marvel MCU humor, does it really matter when you're undermining the seriousness, the serious tone of a scene with that juvenile ass humor? It kind of ruins the moment. Kind of ruins the mood for me personally. When they're getting serious, when they're showing some emotion, allow it to happen. Don't try to fuck it up with some juvenile ass humor. Yes, I know the kids watch this too, but god damn it, these aren't just kids film. People need to stop saying that shit. I already said it in this fucking whole video, assuming I don't cut into multiple parts. I'm thinking about that by now, especially how long it is. But no, it isn't just a fucking franchise for kids or movies for kids. It's only getting more and more juvenile because Disney said so. We gotta keep on with the family friendly. What would we be if we weren't family friendly? You're not being family friendly. You're being juvenile. You're only being kiddie friendly. It's not always very friendly for the fucking adults just because you're friendly for the kids. Family friendly means it's good for the whole family, you dumb fuck. Not just the kids. There's a reason it's called family friendly, not kid friendly. There's a reason some of these films are called family films, not kid films. Yes, you got kid family films, and you got family films that are mostly made for the kids, but family films are family films. They're films that can be enjoyed by the whole family. They're not just films made for kids so the fucking adults can get a break from them and finally take a nap. It's so the whole family can enjoy it together. I'm not even sure if I would consider a lot of the films within any of these phases family films. I mean, some of them probably. I think it depends on which one. Would I necessarily consider this one a family film? Kind of. But again, if we're going to be using that excuse that it is a family film, then it primarily being entertaining for the kids more than anything isn't an excuse. Is it a family film or a kiddie film? If it's a family film, then the adults should be entertained too. Again, subjectively, not everybody's going to be entertained. Same thing for the kids. Subjectively, not everybody's going to be entertained. But if most of the people seeing it are pretty entertained for what it is, then that's a good thing. Even if it is a family picture. Meaning for the whole family, not just the kids. I know, again, probably throughout this whole video, I'm going to sound like a broken record at some points. But if that isn't nailing the fucking... If that's not driving the nail into your head at this point, I don't know what does. Like, for real, dude. That's kind of partially why I will be a broken record in some of my videos. I'm trying to hit the nail on the head and drive it all the way through. to get that point through your skull. Not trying to act like everybody watching this is going to be hard-headed, but it's the internet and some motherfuckers out there are hard-headed. Anyways, I enjoyed the film for what it was, and I definitely enjoyed the final scene that kind of like hinted at on what's going to happen in the next film, like how they're going to go into the quantum realm to help the Ghost Girl out, and as Ant-Man needs to come back out of the quantum realm, they just disappear because of the snapping. Though something I just realized, now that they're all back, and I don't even know how much time has passed since the blip and bringing people back. I don't remember. But I think like 5 or so years has passed. A lot of time has passed since the snapping. That Ghost Girl never got her help. You know, and she can't really blame them for that because of what happened. But I can't help but wonder if that's something they're going to bring up in the following Ant-Man and Wasp film, the Ant-Man and Wasp, the Quantum Realm. Or what? I'm sorry, Quantumania. So I'm wondering if that's something they're going to reference. If they're going to bring that up, like, oh, by the way, you know, I'm still feeling a little bit guilty about not helping that Ghost Girl. And maybe, I don't know why I'm forgetting the main character's name, aside from him being Ant-Man. But maybe you'll have Ant-Man reply with, like, you know, it's not our fault. We were going to help her. Then you guys disappeared because of the snap. I got stuck in the quantum realm. None of it's on our doing. We were going to help the poor girl, and due to some unfortunate circumstances, we were a bit too late. I don't know. Maybe it's an offhand conversation. Maybe they're talking about her and they realize that she did eventually die from her condition, and they weren't able to properly help her because they were gone, and one of them was stuck in the quantum realm. So I don't know. It's kind of funny. They were all this talk about how we're gonna try to help her another way. The snap happens, and most likely that girl never got her help. Most likely that girl died, or at the very least she's on some sort of life support. At most. But I wouldn't be surprised by the time of Quantumania, they just forget all about it, and the Ghost character from the Ant-Man and Wasp film, it's just never brought up again. I mean, they kind of did that again with the setup villain for Doctor Strange. They didn't do nothing with him in Doctor Strange 2. We don't know if we're going to get anything from him in the Doctor Strange 3. So I wouldn't be surprised if they forget all about her. Like, again, I'm not even just talking about the characters in the film, but even the writers. I wouldn't be surprised if the writers just forget all about that girl. So, yeah, she is fucked. I have no doubt that at this point she is fucked. So, yeah, they had good intentions, but, well, just unfortunate circumstances. On to the next film. Captain Marvel. Now, when I went to go see this film, I kept getting it confused with Miss Marvel because, again, at the time, up until this point, I had not seen the film. And with this new Miss Marvel character, and supposedly another one on the way, it's just making shit a whole lot more confusing. Oh, and apparently we're going to get a Marvels film. I don't know if I'm going to check it out, to be honest. If it turns out that people have some good things to say about the film and its narrative, then I might check it out. But, well, Phase 4 isn't doing too well as far as quality. I don't really expect too much from Phase 5. And on top of that, people aren't really too big of fans with Captain Marvel or Miss Marvel, from what I've been hearing. I have not seen the show Miss Marvel at this point, so I cannot give my own personal opinion on that character, of course. But I'm just not really too interested by this character at all. I don't really hate her. I don't like her attitude too much in this film at some points, but it wasn't really as insufferable as so many people out there were talking about. Ooh, excuse me. When I saw the film, I will say it did have those cringe moments like Carol's backstory. Or that scene where it was showing the flashback of her getting back up, and she gets back up and she's like, I'm only human. Like, girl, shut the fuck up. You're fucking cringe. Good for you. You always get knocked down, but you get right back up. Good for you. Like, you're the first one to even tell us that story. I don't know. I didn't really feel her struggle too much. I get what some people were saying in the sense of it didn't feel like she was expressing too much emotion in this film. And so many people were joking about how this lady could not crack a smile for the life of her. But if you actually watch the film, she cracks a smile quite a few times in this film. In fact, she does very much show some emotion in this film. Granted, I do think there are plenty of moments where she should have showed some more emotion instead of having that blank stare. But to say that she didn't show any emotion at all in this whole film, now that's just an outright fucking lie. Why are so many people misrepresenting these films at this point? This is why some people out there cannot take the criticism out there serious. If you're going to misrepresent what happens in a film or what happens in a scene, then your criticism is pretty much utterly broken. She does smile quite a few times in this film. She does show quite a bit of emotion in this film. Just not as much as she probably should be in order for us to really get attached and empathize with this character. Oh, what happened to that one scene where she twists the wrists of that one? I don't know. Was that a deleted scene? Because I remember everybody and their mama was criticizing about that one scene where she twists dude's wrists because he wouldn't leave her alone, the biker dude. And then when that scene came up, I see the biker dude, okay, he's kind of hollering at her. He's not doing it in the most disrespectful way, but at the same time, people aren't obligated to give you attention. If they want to be left alone, they want to be left alone. And if you're gonna be disrespectful afterwards, like, oh freak, there are some assholes out there like that. But nothing really worth getting his ass handed to him. Which again, I'm wondering if that's a deleted scene, because when that biker dude showed up, she did not do anything to him. Tried to get her attention, called her a freak, got up, went inside to the store. Then what does she do? She steals some clothes and steals his bike and then drives off. Needless to say, I was just confused as shit. Because I was expecting this one scene that everybody was talking about to see it for myself and to see if it was as bad as everybody was criticizing it for. And it never happens. It never happened. I was so confused. Is this a deleted scene? Are people just criticizing a deleted scene from this film? Or did the version that I see just not have this scene? Like, is there an extended version of this film that has this scene? And the version I saw just didn't have it at all. Because I was not joking. I'm not joking when I say I was kind of waiting for that scene to come up and judge it for myself. That one biker character was in the movie. But I don't see him get assaulted by Carol Danvers. And I'm not going to say that scene doesn't exist at all, because it is. If you look it up, you will find it. It was a scene that was recorded. But the film that I watched did not have that scene. It had that character. That scene was recorded. But that scene was not in the version of the film that I saw. So I am just so confused. I don't know. I don't know. I am genuinely wondering if all the hate for this film really was just unnecessary and out of nowhere and just people misrepresenting the film. But at the same time, this film really isn't that great either. It has some dull moments, some cringe moments. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. It was just, yeah, it was alright. Oh, that one scene though where she gets back up again, uh, to start fighting to the song "I'm Just a Girl in the World." Could you make my eyes roll any harder into the back of my skull if you tried? Like, if you legitimately tried, do you think you can make my eyes roll into the back of my skull any harder? I can see why some people were calling this a bit woke. Do I see it as a woke film? No. Can I see why at some points people considered it a little bit woke? Yeah. But at the same time, you got to take into the consideration at the time she would have been getting into the military. Oh, and how about the part where she gets her powers? Yeah, she is biologically a human being, right? Like, genetically, species wise, she is a Homo sapien, correct? How the fuck did this bitch just absorb all the energy from this special engine that literally has this energy of a supernova apparently? Like how did she just absorb all? When I was really hoping for them to explain how her body absorbed that energy. Like, why does she have these powers? Yeah, okay, we know why it happened in the explosion, but I'm not even joking. What is the scientific mumbo jumbo for why she has these powers? Why does she just happen to absorb this energy instead of it just killing her and, I don't know, just leaving her nothing but ash? Some things definitely didn't make any sense in this film. Even then, it's not such a big deal that I'm gonna make a big fuss about it like all these other fucking retards. But to say that all the people out there who criticize this film were misogynistic, like all the people were saying at the time, which, I mean, again, at the time, so many people were mentioning, like, oh, what about Wonder Woman? People loved that film. What about Black Widow? They love her character. They couldn't wait for her film before they kind of apparently fucked her a character up, apparently. I got to see it for myself. I haven't seen that film either. So I'm really just going off of what people have been saying from their personal opinions rather than mine when I mention some of this stuff. So that's not my personal opinion. But regardless, to say that people didn't like this film because of misogyny, when people were hoping for a Black Widow film, a good one, and enjoyed Wonder Woman and enjoyed a lot of other characters too within the MCU, really is just fucking ridiculous. But you know what? I don't even want to get into that. I'm just going to say this. The people crying misogyny are just as bad as the people crying woke. Because whereas the people crying woke are giving broken criticism, the people crying misogyny are outright denying all criticism whatsoever. Anybody who gives any criticism a nitpick whatsoever, you just don't like it because, oh, Carol Danvers has a pussy between her legs. Yes, that's the reason I don't like the film, because women have vagina. Ooh. I am shitting myself. Not really. My pants are very clean. Probably just a wet fart at worst. Fucking morons. But yeah, just like I said, don't listen to the idiots crying woke, don't listen to the idiots crying misogyny either. They're both just completely fucking up the whole critique game in general. One's giving broken criticism, One's just outright denying it whatsoever. Don't listen to either, or they're both just as bad as the other. Just ignore these dumb motherfuckers. For the love of God, don't give their YouTube channels, their TikTok pages, don't give their content any more attention, please. At this point, arguing with them in the comment section is pointless. Trust me, I've tried. These people are stubborn and so stuck in their delusion. I don't know. Their head literally might as well be so far up their ass that they might as well be fucking sticking their tongue out of their mouth after sticking it all the way up their ass. I don't think about it too hard. Just don't think about it too hard. I'm gonna break my brain just trying to explain that. On to the final film of this phase. I have talked way too much about this boring meh. It wasn't that boring, but looking back at it, I just don't care for this film. I don't hate it, but I don't like it. It's just, I just don't care. It's literally nothing but indifference. I have my questions. That's about it. I have my opinion. That's about it. It's really just mostly indifference. On to the final film of this phase. Alright, people. We are now on the last film for this phase and are pretty much in the end game for this video. Avengers Endgame. The hype for this film was at its peak. And then once everybody got a chance to see it, oh my god. Just truly an event to top all the events that happened before it. Even more so if you watched it in theaters, because you got to experience it with other people. I personally didn't, and from what I've heard, a lot of people said it was more entertaining in the theaters with people, with a crowd enjoying this big event. But regardless if you watched it at home or watched it in theaters, I think we can all agree this was definitely an event for all of us. And it was the best time. Granted, of course, Endgame isn't the best film in the world. It is probably one of the best films in the MCU, next to all the other Avengers. But of course, I think this is the same for all the other Avengers. With this film, it's the type of film you cannot necessarily watch on its own without watching the other films for context. I think actually the Avengers, the first one, I think we can give the exception to that one. Like, I feel like maybe if you were to watch the first Avenger and then watch all the Avengers in order without all the other movies in between, you could enjoy the films on their own, back to back, that is, without needing all that context, because you do get a little bit of it in the beginning of the films. You're going to be missing some context, don't get me wrong, but you could probably still enjoy those films without all the extra context. But again, that's watching the Avengers films back to back up until Endgame. Otherwise, I think just watching Endgame by itself, and to a degree Age of Ultron by itself, and Infinity War by itself, you can't without at least watching the previous Avengers film, let alone the other films in the MCU phases, because you're going to be missing a lot of context. But regardless, this is a great film, and as long as you do have the context, just watching the films alone, again and again by themselves, is a great time. Of course, you're never going to experience the event the same way again, because it was all building up to that, and that was a very, not the first time, sorry, they were battling Thanos, but you know what I mean. It's what we got, we were all building up to. We're not going to be able to recreate that event again for a long time, at least not with the same film. You're not going to get the feeling again just from rewatching it, but you're definitely going to get some nostalgia, because that was quite a nostalgic moment, to say the least. All the characters, they lost the battle, they're not dealing with it well, and they want to change things. They want to try one last time and bring everybody back. And there's not too much action in this film until later in the film, like some in the middle, mostly near the end. regardless, the whole film in of itself is enjoyable because you can enjoy the characters and them reacting off each other without the action. And that is a great thing. I think when you can sit down and just enjoy characters talking to each other, like nothing else but just having a conversation, and almost feel like you're kind of part of it, like you're kind of the third party just listening in. That's very well, that's good. I think it's very well done when the directors, the writers, and the actors can get this character or these characters to be great just sitting there talking, being a person, being a human, and just talking with their family, talking with their friends, talking with their coworkers, their partners, yada yada. I don't know if I'm the only one. I know I've been hearing more people say the same thing, but I don't know how many of you out there watching this video would agree with me. But we need more dialogue and scenes with characters just being people, just sitting there, talking, having a good conversation, maybe discussing something that is based around the film's plots. But you can really enjoy. Really, dog? You could have just asked. Sorry for the background noise. My dog, when she wants to exit out, she'll exit out of the room. She does not open the door by herself when it's open enough. Because if it's closed all the way, dogs can't really twist the knobs. If she could figure out a way how to, I'm pretty sure she would. Anyways, that's getting off track. I apologize for the noise in the background. But yeah, more films do need scenes with characters just being people, and just have more of that dialogue that allows you to really get closer to these characters and have more sympathy and empathy for them and their circumstances, their situation, because, well, it just makes them feel more human, for lack of a better way to describe it. It feels more human just to sit there with our characters just having a conversation. Again, we can't really be part of it. We're just more like the third party listening in. But still, that alone sometimes can be entertaining, and it can add a lot to a character, to their development, and representing who they are and their values, etc., etc. Black Widow especially, people definitely have been enjoying Black Widow in this film. And mind you, again, barely any action, just Black Widow as a character, Natasha as a person. And Scarlett Johansson really does a good job at bringing the emotion in Black Widow. Like, I promise you, if they were to try to replace her, like, I know they're kind of doing that with Black Widow's sister, but I mean, like, the actual Black Widow, not replacing her with a newcomer, but like if we were to redo the Avengers films or the Black Widow film, or just maybe we did an alternate universe film with Black Widow, and it was not acted by Scarlett Johansson, I think it would just be weird, because at this point I think with the live action Black Widow, we're just used to seeing Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. She is Black Widow when it comes to the MCU. And it honestly kind of sucks to see her go. I mean, I know she died in this film, unless they try to find some excuse to bring her back. And she has her own movie, which I actually haven't seen yet. People said her character was assassinated. I'm kind of inclined to believe it, but I'm still going to try and check it out for myself. There's just so much to catch up on at the time for me. Not necessarily within the MCU, but just stuff in general that I was trying to catch up on. But this film was just great when it came to the dialogue alone, to the moments and emotions alone, and feeling the loss from all the characters and how they were trying to deal with that loss. And another thing I want to mention about this film is, just like the other Avengers, they really had people, the other Avengers films, they really had people talking a lot about this film. But unlike the other films where it had to do with the, I guess, political messaging of the film, it more so had to do with just the time travel events themselves within the film. Which I almost forgot to mention. They time travel back to fix things, and somehow that doesn't affect the main primary timeline. It just somehow breaks off into an alternate universe. I mean, we kind of got something like that in Back to the Future, but because Marty went back to change the events back then, it actually not only altered that different variation of the present, but he ended up in that present. You know, he altered his very reality because he ended up messing with the timeline. Even if theoretically speaking, you know, the original timeline does still exist, how exactly is he supposed to get back to that original timeline? Like, remember in the film, I know this is a different film I'm talking about, but it's comparing and contrasting of how they deal with time travel. I remember in the film where near the end of part one, he starts to fade out of existence from this reality. Do you ever wonder whether or not, you know, was he just going to fade from existence completely? Or maybe would he had fade back into the original reality he belonged in? I'm thinking it most likely would have been the first, mainly because A, that's what they were implementing in the film. That's what they were implying, I mean. And B, again, why would he be in this alternate universe? Why would he not be back in his original timeline? And honestly, again, you can kind of say the same thing for this film. Why would they just end up back in their original timeline? Why wouldn't they end up in this alternative timeline? Like, what is this thing preventing them from ending up here when they go back to the present? If they made it exist by changing the actions of what they did in the original films, by changing the actions of said events. Because we already know that the events of that film end up causing the events within Loki. You know, Loki ends up getting released. But point being, the whole discussion around this film was time travel and how it was used in this film. It really had a lot of banter back and forth from people because it was just... Well, I mean, time travel is confusing in of itself, just in general, no matter what time traveling theory you have for how time could be affected if you went back in time and changed something, because there's a multitude of theories. This type of style of time travel that they did in Endgame was just one of them. But people definitely had a lot of questions, you know, just like, how does that work? Why doesn't this, that, and the third happen? Why wouldn't this lead to this event? Yada yada. And I honestly agree with a lot of those points. But I think with how complicated time travel is, we can keep doing these what ifs, what aboutisms, and never truly get a proper answer. At least for some of these questions, that is. And granted, there are way more questions now due to the events of Loki. So, yeah, that just makes the time traveling even more confusing now, because they time traveled and caused an alternate timeline, but they don't end up in this universe. There still exists. That one gets erased thanks to TVA. And we're just not gonna get into it because there are just so many complications with that as is, with fucking time travel and creating alternate universes because of time travel, and a whole multiverse because of time travel. Which, I mean, we don't know necessarily if they created the multiverse because they went back to time, went back in time. But given the events in Loki, that apparently Loki and Sylvie are supposed to eventually take out Kane, causing the events of the multiversal fracture, I guess we could say in a sense that was supposed to happen. It almost feels like the primary timeline has to stay as a primary timeline, and no multiverse should exist within the primary timeline in order for it to lead the events where the multiverse does start to exist. It does start to fracture, even though it was kind of already existing before the said events. Yeah, this is just getting fucking trippy, just trying to even explain it out loud. Because it just makes space and time so much more complicated. It's like, oh, the multiverse didn't exist, even though they were able to access it before these events. But it's these events that what leads to the multiverse existing. Thus, the multiverse cannot exist if it doesn't exist first. I am breaking my fucking brain just trying to comprehend this shit. Right? That this is why so many people are discussing and debating this, because of just how complicated time travel is, especially when we're talking about time travel that causes a multiverse to happen. But then again, for me personally, this wouldn't be the first time experiencing the issue of time travel causing the complications of a multiverse and just like the events kind of cycling back in of itself. I don't know how many of you out there who are Marvel fans are fans of Call of Duty Zombies. But yeah, you want to talk about completely breaking up space and time and causing events to cycle into each other and just, time travel causing multiple universes. I definitely first dealt with that complication in that series, the COD Zombie series. And later on in the future, I eventually plan on getting into some zombie series and even comparing and contrasting the COD Zombies universe with the Marvel universe. And some people may hear this and think, what possible similarities could zombies, Call of Duty fucking zombies, have to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? I'm not specifically referring to the MCU necessarily, really, dogs, but just the Marvel universe in general, or I guess the multiverse, because there's just so many different universes to necessarily even get specific with a specific one. My speech is all over the place, and you, dog, need to stop opening this door. Once again, I apologize for that. I am rambling on for too long now, but whatever. This video was already long as is. Fuck it. It was already long, like before I started talking about Marvel. But yeah, just time travel, multiverse is complicated, but I am no stranger to the complications of multiversal time travel, thanks to that other franchise. And whereas you have to worry about an collision in like the MCU with multiverses, the other universes colliding with other universes. Imagine other universes cycling into each other. Like, timelines become time cycles, and time cycles start to connect to each other. Like chainmail. Chain links. And somehow events in this time cycle also causes and affects events in this other time cycle, which also causes time and events in this other time cycle, which causes time and events in the original time cycle. Oh my fucking god. Talking about chaos when it comes to the space-time continuum. But yeah, this is nothing new to me when it comes to Marvel, because I've already experienced it with another franchise. But compared to Marvel, they don't have it anywhere near as worse as the COD Zombies universe. And I find it funny, people hear that like zombies and time cycle, space and time chain links. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? How is this all in one franchise? You have no fucking idea. And I cannot wait to get into it in the future. But I gotta finish up on my thoughts for this film. Yeah, great fucking film. We'll love to go watch it again just thinking about it. But boy, was there a lot of discourse on the events and just how complicated time travel is and how that would work. Oh, and one more thing that I want to point out before I close off this video is actually I got to do a final conclusion for this whole phase in general before I close off the video. But one more thing I want to say before I get into my final conclusion for this whole phase in general is there was also some discourse on if they're technically going to a different time, which somehow kind of branches off into a different universe. Like, how is it that Infinity Stones still work in this universe if the original Infinity Stones are destroyed. This is technically not their universe's original Infinity Stones. Technically, officially. Well, that's just another complication in of itself as is, but I think it has to do with the simple fact that it is a variation of this universe. Like, up until the events of the first Avengers film, all the events, like even history, is exactly the same up until those points where it causes that diversion of it being its own universe. But it has the same original timeline origins. So the birth of the Infinity Stones are still exactly the same as the original one that we're in. The Infinity Stones colors and their powers and what specific stone is what is exactly the same in both universes. Now, from what I understand when it comes to the Marvel comic universe, and to a degree, even the animated universe, if you use Infinity Stones from another universe, they're not going to work. But apparently this has to be a universe, a variation of the universe that doesn't have the same timeline origins for the Infinity Stones, or just isn't a similar variant at all whatsoever. Like, it's a completely different variant, a completely different universe, a completely different timeline that isn't in any way connected like the two from Endgame, or any of the universes, multiversal variations of the MCU. Because they're, for the most part, using the same type of Infinity Stone, the same color schemes for the same type of stone. The green stone is the Time Stone. The red stone is the... No, wait, sorry. The Reality Stone. I was about to say the Power Stone, but I remembered the purple one is the Power Stone. So, they can still work because, for the most part, they're still the same Infinity Stones. It's just a different variation of the timelines that have the same type of Infinity Stones. And sometimes characters in history. But in another universe where the stones are completely different, then yeah, if you bring those stones into the MCU universe, they're not going to work. So any very similar variation, even if the only similar variation are the Infinity Stones themselves, of that universe, the Infinity Stones will be able to work in another universe. But if the other universe, the other variant, is so completely and utterly different to the point where the stones themselves are completely different, or maybe even the stones themselves are just completely different, then most likely those stones will not work in another Marvel universe, because those stones are in no way similar, other than, they're also Infinity Stones. But in this universe, the Time Stone is purple, the Power Stone is blue, the Space Stone is green. Technically completely different stones, even though they're very similar in a sense. They're technically completely different types of stones. So yeah, basically saying if it's the exact same type of stones in a variant universe, they're gonna work. If not, then it's not gonna work. It's all about how similar this specific item, aka the Infinity Stones, are, and how they were created at the very least. So yeah, of course the Infinity Stones can work in another variant universe, and the Infinity Stones are exactly the same, and everything else in that universe is different. But even if the only thing different is the stones themselves, then, well, they're not going to work, because they're not practically the exact same stones. They're completely different stones with just the same names, same abilities, but different stones. And I guess connected to the energy of their variant reality, which is disconnected from the other variants, which are connected to the origins of this timeline, as we can kind of sort of see from that TVA video explanation in Loki. For anybody who has seen Loki, that is. If not, then probably just look at that one scene. You don't have to watch the whole show or even that one whole episode to see what I'm talking about. Just that one scene will be enough to explain it, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I see what you mean. Why the stones will only work in these specific variants. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the Infinity Stones. I feel like I should have made that its own separate video. I might still make that its own separate video. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. And I don't mean a separate video like a segment from this video, but like just going over the topic again of the Infinity Stones and why they're able to work in variant universes in a completely new video. But well, I'll see. I'll see what happens about that in the future because I already got a lot of projects ahead of me as is. And now on to my final conclusion because I have rambled on too long about Avengers Endgame, probably more than the other films. Final conclusion for this phase, phase 3. Well, what can I say? I enjoyed the shit out of this phase, like I enjoyed the first two phases. The character development, the dialogue, character interactions, the music. I didn't really talk too much about the music, and because the music is usually at a low volume and in the background, I don't always notice it or remember it. But the times I do is usually the times that when it really adds to an emotional scene or the emotions for a specific scene. If it's not very emotional, at least in like, in a sappy sort of way, maybe, the hype, the excitement, when they play the Avengers scene, when they assemble, for example, just perfect. Just perfect. The music was very well done in all these films. I mean, well, Miss Marvel's a bit rough around the edges for reasons I've already mentioned. But I can say that there were some points where the dialogue was good. For the most part, the music was pretty decent up until that "I'm just a girl in the world" when she gets back up, like fucking cringe, bro. I always get knocked back down, but I get right back up. Good for you, you fucking use an overused fucking message from like the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It takes place in the 80s, but I mean, could you give me any more of an eye roll? And the CGI, I mean, you can still tell it's CGI. I think this is getting to the point where they were overworking their VFX artists. But it isn't really roughing around the edges, It's still very good. No matter what, to a degree, you can tell CGI is CGI. But the CGI was good in this film. I will say it was, at the very least, enjoyable. As well as the rest of these films for this phase, it was good. And then you got Ant-Man, which wasn't really too much of an event, the most hyped movie ever, but it was still a fun and entertaining film. Even though we're not going to get some big events moving on in the future, even though we're not going to get too much hype and excitement, too much connection to the other MCU stuff, I'm fine with that. If we can still get a fun and entertaining film and still enjoy the characters that we get in future MCU installments, then I'm fine with that. Not every film has to be an event that tops the previous one before it. Just let it be a fun, entertaining, interesting, good written film, and I can be happy with that. I can enjoy it as is. I can like the film for what it is. And like it's separate from the rest of the MCU titles and just the MCU universe in general. I could definitely say that about both the Ant-Man films. You can watch them separate from the MCU. You're not going to be missing anything. You don't need no extra context. And they're both enjoyable films on their own as is. And the same thing for the Iron Man films. The same thing for the Thor films. The same thing for the Avenger films. This is kind of a final conclusion for all the phases that I've reviewed, or I'm sorry, retrospective by now. So phase 1, 2, and 3. But especially phase 3. I've definitely enjoyed all these films, and you can definitely enjoy them on their own without having to worry about connecting everything, to the other films. Again, to a degree, with the exception of the other 3 Avengers films. The first one you could probably watch by itself and not have to watch the other ones if you don't have extra context. The other ones, I don't know if I could say the same for those films. I don't know. Maybe you agree. Maybe you disagree. Let me know in the comment section down below. But I feel like, at least with the other 3 Avengers films, you can't really watch them without some of the extra context. Well, maybe not for Age of Ultron. I don't know. I mean, you would need some context at the very least for... Actually, never mind. No, I think you can actually watch even Age of Ultron by itself and not need extra context. I mean, you're not going to know too much about the characters if you haven't seen the other films. But I think you can still watch Age of Ultron without all the extra films for extra context and enjoy the film as is if you don't, know too much about the previous films. But again, if you disagree with me, tell me why in the comment section down below. I would love to hear it. And this is pretty much the end of the video. I cannot wait to talk to you guys about Phase 4 in the future. And I specifically want to get into WandaVision and the Multiverse of Madness. I'm probably going to do those two in one video since they're connected. And then a specific video on What If. And then another one specifically on the Zombies episode. Because that one really fucking disappointed the shit out of me. Literally the shittiest episode out of the whole... I'll save my commentary on that for the future video. But yeah, I cannot wait to get into that, as well as some theories for COD Zombies, and to go over how these two franchises are much more similar than you think. Till then, I'll see you guys next time. Leave a like if you enjoyed. If not, leave a dislike in a comment telling me why. Any and all interaction is good interaction for my channel and the algorithm. And any and all criticism is good to help me get better. And again, I've been saying this in my videos, and I'm going to keep on saying it. All your interaction matters, even your dislikes. So because of that, I appreciate you giving me the time of day, even if you didn't like it. I enjoy the fact that you may have watched all the way to the end, even if you didn't completely enjoy it. Granted, if you didn't enjoy it, it sucks you wasted all the time, but that's on you. Even then, I appreciate your time. No disrespect, I appreciate it. And do leave your dislike if you didn't like it. Because it does matter, it does help. And a comment telling me why. Because I would love to know why. I would love to know your opinion. And again, interaction is still interaction. Engagement is engagement, and that's all the platform cares about. Doesn't care if it's positive or negative. Regardless of what YouTube says, your dislike does matter. It does help. Chaotic out. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. See you guys next time.